You know, when you hear the word serial killer, an image probably pops into your head, right? Well, the case of Aileen Wuornos, it just shatters that image. Her story challenges pretty much every stereotype we have and makes us ask some really tough questions about trauma, justice, and what it even means to survive. So let's dive into this incredibly complex case.
All right, so to really get our heads around this story, we've got to start with just how different she was. Wuornos completely broke the mold. She was nothing like what law enforcement or any of us really expected.
Okay, look at this. The difference is just night and day. On one hand, you have the typical profile, a male, usually charming, maybe a little mysterious. And then you have Aileen Wuornos. She was the polar opposite. A woman who is openly, confrontational and defensive. Not that quiet, manipulative type we often hear about. And the motive? Most offenders are driven by this, predatory need. But her story, from day one, was all about self-defense and survival. This is exactly why her case was such a big deal. It made everyone, from cops to criminologists, stop and rethink their most basic assumptions about who a killer could be.
So where did all this come from? I mean, these things don't just happen in a vacuum, right? Her story is rooted in a childhood built on just extreme, relentless trauma. And it started quite literally from the moment she was born. Think about this. From day one, she never had a stable, safe place to call home. Her parents abandoned her. She ends up with her grandparents. But that wasn't a safe haven, not at all. It was a home filled with abuse and neglect, and that just set the stage for a pattern of harm that would follow her for the rest of her life.
And just look at this timeline. It's not just one bad thing happening. It's a domino effect. First, she's abandoned. That leads to abuse. The abuse leads her to the streets. And living on the streets leads to survival sex work. See how each step just locks her further into this world of danger and instability? There was no escape hatch, no path to safety. Her life wasn't just a string of bad luck, it was a total cascade of failures, one after another, right from the very beginning.
So all of that trauma from her childhood, it didn't just disappear. It bled right into her adult life. And the highways of Florida, they became the setting for the crimes that would make her infamous.
So as an adult, this is her reality. She's supporting herself through sex work on the highways of Florida, a life that's incredibly dangerous and unpredictable. The men she killed were her clients, the motorists she met out there. And for about a year, between 1989 and 1990, a series of murders along these roads triggers this huge investigation. It really set the stage for one of the most controversial and talked about criminal cases we've seen in a long time.
And this right here, this is the absolute heart of the matter. It's the one question that defined everything. Her trial, all the media coverage, and every debate people had about her. What was the motive?
From the second she was arrested, Aileen Wuornos told one story, and she stuck to it. She consistently claimed that every single killing was self-defense. Her narrative was that she was fighting for her life against men who were trying to violently assault or even murder her.
But the prosecution? They told a completely different story. They said no, this wasn't about survival, this was about money. They argued that the robberies were proof that these weren't acts of self-defense, but cold, premeditated murders for financial gain. So you have these two narratives completely at odds with each other, and that clash became the central battle of the whole case.
In the end, the jury sided with the prosecution. Aileen Wuornos was convicted of 6 first-degree murders. Now, here's something really important. She was diagnosed with severe personality and trauma-related disorders, but her outbursts in the courtroom, the media ran with that. To the public, it didn't look like a symptom of trauma, it just looked like she was volatile and guilty. And that's a key takeaway here. Her entire life of trauma wasn't seen as something that might explain her actions. Instead, it was twisted into proof that she was just a monster.
But the story doesn't just end with a conviction. Not at all. Her case left behind this really complex legacy, one that makes us confront some tough questions about our justice system and, really, about our society.
Back then, the media had a field day. They painted her as this monster, an anomaly, this mystery of female rage. But today, criminologists look at her case through a totally different lens. They see a tragic result of systemic failures, a textbook case of untreated trauma, and a powerful example of what's now called survival-based violence.
So what exactly is survival violence? Well, it's a term for violence that doesn't come from a place of predation. Instead, it comes from this perfect storm of horrible circumstances: chronic abuse, absolute economic desperation, and being exposed to sexual violence over and over again.
Now, this doesn't excuse the violence, but it completely changes how we understand where it came from.
And then, in 2002, Aileen Wuornos was executed in Florida. Her life came to an end, but the debate and the questions her case raised, those were far from over.
I think this quote really sums it all up perfectly. We have this tendency to turn people like Wuornos into myths or monsters. But the truth is so much more tragic. Her story isn't some great mystery. It's the story of a collapse, a total breakdown of every system that was supposed to protect a person.
And so, all of this leaves us with one final and really critical question to think about. Aileen Wuornos' case forces us to ask, is our legal system, which loves to draw these hard lines between right and wrong, actually equipped to deal with the messy, blurred, and desperate line that separates predation from pure survival?